We're talking NFL draft futures. This is the Pick Six. You're listening to Sean and Andrew. How you doing, buddy?
What's up, man? I'm doing good. I'm surviving this COVID-19, staying quarantined.
Staying quarantined. Chicago just issued or extended the stay-at-home order until April 30th. So, where's your state at these days? Like, when does your order end, or is it open-ended at this point?
It just changes. It seems like every single day it gets extended. Someone else gets extended. So for me, it's like, hey, I'm not moving. I'm staying at home. It just until someone says, because I know when we can go outside, I'll know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
So until that point, I think mine is extended till the beginning of May in Boston. So
yeah.
I mean, it's more like, but hey, we got the draft.
We have the NFL draft. That's happening regardless, so I'm pretty happy about that. I think, Andrew, we talked about this on the last episode. If not, I mentioned it on one of the other podcasts. By the way, if you're picking the show up, please like and subscribe. If you're listening to us on Apple iTunes, definitely subscribe. We could use more everybody could always use more subscribers, but help us grow. That'd be cool. If you're watching us on YouTube, certainly please like and subscribe there as well. But I had heard through a guy I work with on Underdog. I don't do any host any shows or anything like that with him, but he's a pretty well-connected sports reporter, one of the NFL teams, he talks to quite a bit. And they said that they're going to, like, the TV coverage of the NFL draft is going to be like anything, unlike anything we've ever seen. So it's supposed to be really like next level. We're supposed to get like more peeks into the war rooms and all that stuff than we usually do, because there's no crowd, all that stuff's canceled. So there's not going to be, I don't think there's going to be a Deion Sanders in alligator shoes talking to the players right after they shake Goodell's hand, but maybe he's going to be on Skype. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But it should be pretty cool. I don't know. But we can bet on it. That's the cool thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I bet, they just got to get the Atlanta Falcons. They can get them over to Vegas. They can pump some crowd noise in, and we'll be good to go.
There you go. Or the old Indianapolis Colts. Just maybe it's the same sound guy. Has anybody ever made that link, right? Let's see here. It's like that. It's like the baseball scandal with the sign stealing. As soon as somebody leaves the Houston Texans organization and goes to Boston, as you know, or I forgot where the other one was. The Mets. They fire the managers and what have you. But maybe it's the same thing with the NFL noise. They got the sound guy jumping around. So
think about that too. Like, remember how that was like the big story heading into baseball was Houston, and now it's like everyone forgot about it.
Everybody forgot about it, but I'm sure they'll remember when games are played.
Yes.
Social media is pretty ruthless in that way. But okay, so we're going to be talking about some NFL draft futures today. Andrew and I have both selected our 3 favorite futures. If you like betting on futures, and these are actual bets you can make. Andrew and I actually pulled these off of Bet Online, but you can go to basically any online sportsbook, and make these. And the draft is happening. There are some sporting events that are kind of moving forward, so you can make some bets on them. But yeah, Andrew, I tell you what, why don't you start with your first one? We'll just tag team. So I'll go next, and then we'll work through our 6 that way. What is your favorite NFL draft future?
Yeah, so the one I like the most is definitely Henry Ruggs being drafted as the first wide receiver overall. You're getting him at plus odds. I've seen it anywhere. It was at plus 400 when I first looked at it. It's at plus 300 now. So that's higher than when you look at the odds versus CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, which are basically split.
Right.
Both at plus 120 here on Bet Online. So the way I see it is Ruggs is a player that is going to be better, and this is kind of what the explanation for me has been, is he's a player that's going to just improve the overall offense. He offers something that Lamb and Jeudy don't necessarily offer. I think that they're better, just overall well-rounded, probably will be better fantasy wide receivers. But Henry Ruggs, it's like, with this class being so deep at receiver, you can get a similar CeeDee Lamb type player later on.
Yeah.
You can get a similar Jerry Jeudy player. There's no one else like Ruggs in the draft. And really, it seems like in the NFL, unless you're looking at Tyreek Hill. That's who you have. So for a team to make the decision, hey, we're going to hop up and get Ruggs, I just think that he offers the most difference-making of the 3 receivers that are kind of the top 3. And I think that considering you can get him, you get more payout for him when he's a guy that teams are going to fall in love with. I mean, we saw John Ross go in the top 10.
Right.
Because of speed.
Right.
and we saw Tyreek Hill in the Super Bowl. It's like
Tyreek Hill is such an interesting monster. So coming into I do some things with the Fantasy Football Almanac, as you know, Andrew. I try to project, player opportunity, and we talk about opportunity ranking and all that stuff. And the amount of opportunity that Tyreek Hill had was so far and above everybody else last year. I honestly didn't publish it because I thought it was going to be one of those polarizing things that people would just criticize, because you know how people hate when it comes to fantasy football. Now, I did publish that he was the number one, but he was like double the next player in terms of the statistics and analytics I put together. So when you're talking about like a player of that physical talent, that's really hard to match up with, and that's what NFL is, right? It's strategy, it's plugging players in that create crazy matchup problems. So I completely see your point, and it's almost like wide receivers, beauties in the eye of the beholder. And I look like it's at a team like Oakland, who's sitting there. What are they? They have 12, right? And the number 12 is their two first rounders.
Yep.
Everybody's saying Judy or Lamb, and when I go on the Reddit, and I did the Reddit mock draft, the community mock draft, everybody was saying basically CeeDee Lamb or Judy was one of the two. I think that they already have Terrell Williams on the other side. Get somebody that can blow the top off the defense and create matchup issues, because it helps everybody else out. It'll help Witten, who's over there now, certainly Waller or Foster Moreau. They have like 3 tight ends that can still, Witten, he didn't do well last year, but he can still produce at tight end. Williams, it helps him on the other side. Any of these unheralded guys that are kind of coming up, it'll help them. If you have somebody that can blow the top off a defense, but also just like make, I don't know, linebackers eat dirt when you're running that little shallow in and out, like that Julian Edelman, but with more speed kind of route. He's just a nightmare. So I see your point. I don't know if I buy it in terms of it, but you're talking about a plus 400 value. And a team like Oakland, first of all, is in the mix. And then, like you said, a team could move up in position to jump ahead of some teams and make them. So I think that's good value. Plus 400, man. You don't really often find that kind of value for a caliber player like that. So
yeah, and I think that's all I've been hearing is that they'll be surprised if Ruggs goes the first receiver off the board. Like right. NFL teams really like this guy. I mean, think about it. He's the one out of these 3 receivers. He's the one guy that can make an impact that doesn't have without even touching the ball.
Sure. And that's exactly right. And that's what I was saying. And I know this isn't realistic for the NFL draft, but Green Bay and pre DeAndre Hopkins Houston, that's all I was preaching last year, is they need somebody. Now, obviously the Texans have Will Fuller, but he can never really stay on the field, at least consistently. So yeah, I mean, I like it. And that plus 400, that's good value. So I think that's a nice one. Now, this isn't my favorite, but since it kind of ties into yours, Andrew, I'll give you mine. This was actually my second favorite. I have over under pick 12 CeeDee Lamb. I picked that because, is he going to go to Oakland at 12 is my question. And I think there's enough out there. I mean, it could be Judy, and like to your point, I actually think Ruggs would be a better fit there for Gruden. It's not the prototypical big receiver that system likes, but he's a gadget. Gadget is a little disrespectful for Ruggs' ability, but he's that matchup problem before. So you're talking about CeeDee Lamb. Is he going to be taken 12? No. With Arizona getting DeAndre Hopkins, I don't think that they're really going to go wide receiver. I don't think any of these teams above 12 are going to go. When I start looking at CeeDee Lamb, I look at possibly, certainly possibly Oakland. But then you have San Francisco, you have the Jets, you have a lot of teams coming in behind them. So for that, and the odds are at minus 115 for Mr. CeeDee Lamb, because the NFL, again, and especially at wide receiver, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, how her player's going to fit your scheme. 12.5, pick 12.5. So I think there's a pretty decent odd. I would say, 55% chance he goes 13 or lower. So I like that. I like that over bet for CeeDee Lamb at minus 115. All right, back to you, Andrew. Who's your second favorite, or what is your second favorite NFL future pick for the NFL draft?
All right, so I'm looking at the quarterback position. And so, again, this is another one that you can get plus odds on, and it's the second quarterback drafted, and it's Justin Herbert. I've heard a lot of things about Miami liking Herbert, not necessarily liking Tua as much. I mean, a lot of it's, smokescreen, this and that.
Yeah,
but
right.
again, we're not in the building. Like we don't know exactly who likes who, and we've heard about Miami now considering trading up to get Burrow. So like I mean, it seems like they're all open for business for any of these quarterbacks. Like they have seen that they're not tied to anyone. I think they're almost kind of looking at a value. It's like, hey, we value this guy here. What's his price? That's what they're kind of looking at. And I just think that we always think that, okay, like this quarterback's going to go here. This team likes this. I just think that at plus odds, I mean, I would say in this particular draft, and this is what kind of made me think about it the most, is Tua, the reason Tua is not the number one pick or not like solidified in any shape or form is because of his injury concerns.
Sure.
And in this particular draft, because of what is going on in the league and just in the world in general, teams are not as able to get medical checks on a guy like Tua. They don't have a guy in the building that can check out his hip. So
Right.
for me, it's like, are we more likely to see someone trade up for a guy that's injury prone, considering they can't get medicals on him, or are we going to see him fall? In this scenario,
Yeah.
I would just say, I guess if I had to bet one way or the other, I would bet that he's more likely to fall in this type of scenario that we're in, as opposed to, oh, they got the information, he's got, checked in with all the teams, we have everything is good to go. Like, that's not the case here. So for teams saying that, oh, these teams are all going to trade up for Tua, it's like, what confidence does that give you in if you're trading multiple picks for a guy that you don't know is extremely healthy? That's my concern. So I just like, if I'm going to make that bet, and I'm getting it plus 375 that Justin Herbert's the second quarterback. I mean, Miami has had ties to him. He's healthy. He's a 4-year starter. And we look back at who Dolphins have had at quarterbacks, looking at Tannehill. Tannehill was not experienced whatsoever. He played wide receiver.
Right.
Justin Herbert is the total opposite of that. He's a 4-year starter. He's been playing quarterback like his entire life. He's not a switch wide receiver. So I just think that Justin Herbert, and they could take him right at 5.
Yep.
Like they don't need to trade up.
Right.
They don't need to do anything. He's there for the picking, and I just think that at 375 plus odds, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I have never been a buyer on Miami moving up. I mean, what Miami is, to me, it's pretty clear what this organization is doing. They are accumulating draft picks to fill a lot of needs, and they have a lot of needs. And I think that. I think you and I talked about this on a previous podcast, but Miami plays hard. Like, I was really impressed with how hard they played, and they played, if you don't look at the season-long record, look at the back half of the season, they were pretty good. I mean, they might even have been, 5-8 in their last 13. I mean, they weren't awful. They got the bulk of their wins after after that pretty miserable start. And that's a testament to the coaching staff. So I like what Flores is doing there. It was a little weird that his defensive coordinator left to be a defensive coordinator for the Giants, but whatever. Bringing in Chan Gailey, I kind of thought it was an odd move, but as you and I talked about, I like Chan Gailey coming in there because I think he's going to help that run blocking, and he's going to help whatever's going to happen in that run game. They have Jordan Howard. My guess is they'll probably add another piece in the draft, but you never know how those things shake out. With respect to Miami, honestly, it wouldn't shock me if they don't go quarterback with that number 5. Now, it would shock everybody else, and I got hammered on it in my first NFL mock draft, my first version that came out in February. It was like, oh, you're an idiot, because it's that's kind of what social media does, right? But here's my thinking is Miami, to your point, do they really want to draft a player with injury concerns? And he's been cleared to play, right? But what does that mean? And teams, especially that high, are they going to take a risk on a player like that? And what system does Chan Gailey want to run? This isn't Greg Roman at offensive coordinator. I don't think that mobility is really going to speak to him. I don't think he would necessarily push it away if that's what he was getting. But I'm not convinced that that's a fit. I'm sorry, I just don't. And so when people are talking about Miami trading up, whether it's for Burrow, like you said, I don't buy it. I don't think that they're going to give away draft capital. If anything, I think they would trade back. But I would say that the smoke screens, like you mentioned before, those smoke screens don't say to me that they're dropping back. I think they have a player targeted at 5. And it would not shock me if it's a defensive player. It would not shock me if it was like Tristan Wirfs or somebody like that. Now, it wouldn't shock me if they do draft Tua, but what I'm saying is this isn't an open shut case for me at all. So your point, Justin Herbert, I mean, Miami might step back at 5 and take Herbert, even if Tua was available. Now, what I am interested about and this goes to mine, actually, we didn't plan it this way, but this actually feeds right off of what you were saying. My first overall one was third overall pick, and I picked Tua to go third overall because I think that the Redskins are going to draft Chase Young. Which I know they're like everybody who's not a Redskins fan, or maybe a Carolina Panthers fan is saying, "Oh, you got to draft Tua," which I don't necessarily disagree with. But I don't believe that Ron Rivera, who's going to be making this pick, is going to pass up the all-decade talent of Chase Young. I just don't see that happening. You got Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera basically running the ship there. I just don't see them passing on that defensive lineman, especially when Ron Rivera coached Julius Peppers for so long in his career. He knows what kind of impact that can be. So, yeah, I mean, I like three. I like the Chargers to move up. I know in my notes below I have Miami. I meant to say Chargers. I think the Chargers move up from 6 in the hopes of drafting Tua to block Miami from moving up earlier. And I think Miami either stays and takes Herbert, or they wait back and maybe they try to take like a guy like Love or something like that a little bit later in the draft. One of these kind of other quarterbacks. It just seems more logical to me. I know I'm probably the only person in the world saying that, but I think Miami, honestly, I give it 50-50. Draft a quarterback, whoever is there, who they like, or wait until later in the first round. So. But I do think the Chargers or somebody else tries to move up and snag Tua. So we disagree, but I do agree with you that Miami, I'm not sold on Tua being a fit there. I'm sorry, I'm just not. So we do agree on that. So I think that's worth it. You said you're getting plus odds on that one?
Yeah. So Herbert was plus 375. Yeah, but I agree too. I think that just going back to Tua. I think Tua is a much better fit in LA. Just and from a schematic standpoint.
What I love about Baltimore last year, and teams don't often do this, what Baltimore last year, and what if the Chargers are supposed to, would do this, they would have the same kind of setup. Is your backup quarterback can has the same kind of talent that your starting quarterback has. So you have RG3 backing up Lamar Jackson. I think that's a perfect fit. So when Lamar Jackson's back, they're not just sitting with a statue drop back quarterback. You still have a guy with mobility that's trying to make it happen, right? And Tyrod Taylor, my guess would start this year if they drafted Tua, at least for a while, to just make sure that hip is okay. And, then if you move forward and Tua's there, I would imagine you would try to re-sign Taylor. I don't know his contract status offhand, but I think he would be nice to step in behind Tua and help him go there. And Tyrod Taylor is used to having a first-round quarterback, a top-5 quarterback, take his job. So it's happened to him, and I think he'd be gracious enough. So, yeah, I think it's good. So your third favorite NFL futures pick here. What did you like it?
Yeah, so I got so this was Jedrick Wills. So this is talking, this is probably the most offensive line talk that we get when we talk about just NFL in general. But right now, with the odds that they are, so Tristan Wirfs is the favorite to go first at minus 130, and then Becton is second at plus 200, and then Jedrick Wills is at plus 400. And everything that I've done, my research with offensive line, and again, it depends on, all teams are going to rank them kind of a little bit differently in terms of just how their own scheme works and how does, this team's, there necessarily isn't a consensus number one, but from what I've done in my own research, it's like Wills seems like the best one to me. So to just get him at plus odds when realistically the odds are probably, 25, like 50, 50, 50, 50, like it's really like a crapshoot. And to say that, Wirfs is obviously going to be the first one drafted, I don't agree with that. Like, I think that he's just as likely to be drafted first as Becton or Wills. So this is just a value play here. I just think that Wills at plus 400 makes the most sense. It's like the Giants could take him. Like, there are plenty of teams that could take offensive linemen. I think Wirfs, his best fit has been a lot of mocks, and even one that I'm going to be working on has him going to the Cardinals. So they pick at 8. So, but there are teams like, the Chargers and Dolphins could take a tackle.
It would
the
not.
Giants could take a tackle.
It would not shock me one bit if the Dolphins take a tackle there. And frankly, I wouldn't argue that at all. And I think in my first mock draft, I think I had them taking maybe Wirfs or maybe Wills. And by the way, Becton, I don't think he's. I would have him third or fourth even in the. I know his measurables stack up; they're great measurables, but tape factors in too, especially with some of these teams. Like, I can't imagine like the Jets and Adam Gase like saying, "Oh, let me take the guy who has measurables." Certainly, I don't see Gruden doing that in Oakland. Like it wouldn't, because Oakland has, I believe they're at what are they, 19 is their second of their 2 first rounders.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm going off of memory there, but yeah, it wouldn't shock me because of how deep wide receiver is and some of those value guys can get a little bit. It wouldn't shock me if Oakland went offensive tackle and not a wide receiver like everybody in the world saying they're going to do. Wouldn't shock me because you do have, like you said, you have Ruggs. Where's he going to go? You have Lamb. You have Judy. San Francisco, everybody thinks that they're going to draft a wide receiver. People forget that they have Jalen Hurd from last year. Maybe they don't feel like they need a wide receiver. Maybe they're going to take another freaking defensive end, and just have the sickest, nastiest pass rush for another decade. But, yeah, like offensive line, Jedrick Wills. I mean, certainly. I think Wills and Wirfs are a coin flip for me, and I think one of those two will go first. And it wouldn't shock me if Andrew Thomas goes in front of Becton. It wouldn't. So I would, if it were me and I was odd setting, and I know that's not how it works, but I would have Becton at 3 and then basically a toss up for Wirfs and Wills. And it's a coin flip based on offensive scheme fit. I think that he's a nice fit for Arizona, but maybe not so much Oakland. Maybe Oakland wants somebody a little bit more measurable, if we were to get there. So, yeah, I like that. And you said plus odds on that. Plus 400 for that?
Yeah, it's plus 400, and Wirfs is minus 130. So,
yeah.
That's what like stood out to me. I was like, it shouldn't be that different. Like, it's so much, like we just talked about. It's like you could go 50-50. So I was like, okay, well, it's plus 400, so I'm just gonna go with that one.
Yeah,
that's what makes the most sense.
Like if Giants go offensive tackle, I think they would go Wills.
Yeah.
Let's just roll through. I think if Oakland goes offensive tackle there, I think they would probably try quarterback. If they go offensive tackle, I believe it would be Wills. Who's Detroit? I think they're probably going to go defense. And I think that would be a coin flip to me. Who's sitting at 6? No, that is L.A. Who's at 7? I can't remember. Is that Carolina?
Yep, Carolina.
I don't know what the hell they do. I can't. I'm having a hell of a time getting a beat on.
I feel like with Carolina. So, and this is something that actually. So someone mentioned. So Jim Nagy that runs the Senior Bowl. He was talking about the tackles just overall, and basically he was saying that. Anybody that drafts a tackle over Isaiah Simmons or Derek Brown is drafting for need. And there are going to be teams that do that at the tackle position. But he was basically saying, like, if you're based on best player available, Derek Brown and Isaiah Simmons should both be drafted ahead of any of these tackles, which, again, I mean, we just talked about, like, 3 tackles that are, like, semi-interchangeable, whereas Isaiah Simmons and Derek Brown are probably the 2 biggest outside of Chase Young,
right,
like defensive like players that you would want to you could build around.
What's interesting too. So if Detroit doesn't trade that pick, the number 3 overall, and if I know you have it open, so if you can kind of scroll down and try to find what the odds are for the number 3, the one where I picked Tua at plus 165, I believe Isaiah Simmons was at plus 700 or something like that. Like
yes,
plus 700. If Detroit keeps that pick, I know everybody's saying Okudah. Look, cornerbacks are important. Don't get me wrong. And they just traded their entire defensive backfield in like a matter of like 3 months. But that wouldn't shock me if they went Simmons. I mean, a playmaking guy that you can put on the edge. I think that's super important, especially with like a 3-4 defense and what Patricia would try to run in base. At plus 700, that's pretty good value too. But that didn't make my cut, and I'm sticking to it. I think the Lions will trade down with somebody. But let me move on to my last one, and I do like this quite a bit. Over under pick number 16. So it's pick 16.5 over under. CJ Henderson, defensive back from Florida. I have him going over. I don't think he's going to be drafted before 16. Or I'm sorry, before 17. I think he'll fall into the 20s based on kind of what I've been seeing lately. There have been a bunch of defensive backs who have been moving up, especially after the combine. I think coming in, if this were January, that would probably be maybe February. That would be kind of an okay thing. But C.J. Henderson, everything I'm seeing now is that he's fallen into the 20s or a little bit before. And you got guys I think is like Fulton, other defensive backs that are just kind of popping up. I think he falls, and I think he's going to have a really nice landing spot. Like I could see like him falling to like Baltimore or something. Baltimore gets him, and he's like a Pro Bowl cornerback for 10 years, or like San Francisco drafts him at 31 or something, or Kansas City needs cornerbacks now because they lost Fuller in free agency. So, I mean, I could see that happening. I think he'll be a very good player, don't get me wrong, but I just think of where kind of draft slotting is and the buzz from here, and I just think he's a little bit later. But that's at minus 105. The over is minus 105. What do you think about that one?
Yeah, again, similar to what we talked about with offensive linemen and scheme, it's the same thing with corners. Like, do they want a corner that, or is the team looking at the corner, oh, do we want to play outside, or do we need to play in the slot? Like, what are we doing with this guy? Or are we playing zone? Or are we playing man? Like, so that's why, like, different corners are just going to rank differently. Like, outside, probably Okudah, who I think is just he's kind of locked in as that number one, and then everyone else kind of falls into place because there's Fulton and there's Henderson and there's Diggs, Jalen Johnson. Like, there's a lot of like deep corners in this class, so it's very scheme dependent about what teams are ultimately going to do. So at 16, yeah, I mean, I would say like the teams that I can't. I mean, the Raiders are definitely a team they could go receiver or corner. Like they have to draft a DB at some point.
Yeah, they do.
So it would be interesting to see, okay, do they like, hey, we know that this class is really deep at receiver. Let's go DB first. But then again, it's like, well, if we want to get a guy like Lamb, we have to take him now. And then we can just take, whatever corner that's kind of like the same.
For the Raiders, I think this is a really nice draft. I know I was talking offensive tackle before, but this is a really nice draft because in theory, if they love, and you know how the NFL boards are, and I believe that it's not McCoy. Who's their GM, the ex-NFL Network guy? I can't remember his name. Mayock. Thank you. I believe he's a top player available, best player available kind of guy. And I think he works pretty well with Gruden. So when you're talking about Mayock and they're sitting there at 12, are they going to take a wide receiver just because it's need? I don't necessarily think they will do that because of how deep the defensive backs and especially the wide receivers are this year. Like, I think they could, if they think that Wills or Wirfs or, insert your offensive lineman there, if they think that, they're a top 3 player, then I think they'll pop on them and they'll be content, maybe not necessarily loving it. And I don't know that the fans would love it, but they'll be content to wait and find somebody. And they found a lot of good players later in the draft last year too. So, I think this organization will do fine. But ideally, if they do pick a defensive back and a wide receiver, they could do either with either pick, and are likely to. So,
yes, it's interesting because another team that's kind of in a similar situation that has, I mean, if you look at a lot of the teams that have multiple picks in the first round, so you look at Miami, Oakland, Jacksonville, all those teams need some type of, they could use some type of, I guess really not Miami because they had just signed Byron Jones, but with Jacksonville, they need a corner. Like they don't have they traded away everybody. Like they don't have, so it depends on, do they go corner at 9 or do they corner at 20?
Right.
So that could be kind of what causes the type of shift. And Jacksonville picks before Oakland, but then Oakland picks before Jacksonville.
Yeah, right.
So it's interesting to kind of see those two teams because they both have 2 picks within the top 20, which is interesting.
It'll be interesting. I know we're kind of off the bets here, but it'll be interesting to see for me what Indianapolis does. They have 2 second-rounders, pretty good picks in terms of slot. They're going to be able to find somebody really good with their what was the Redskins' second-round pick. I think it's a 34, right? So the number 2 pick in the second round. And I wonder where they go because we didn't really get a chance to see Paris Campbell last year. Funchess is gone. He's moved on. So what is Phillip Rivers going to have behind T.Y. Hilton at wide receiver? You are going to get some Paris Campbell, but we didn't, like Jalen Hurd in San Francisco, but not as much. We didn't really get to see him. So I'm curious to see if maybe they go early wide receiver in that second round, give Rivers some weapons. He's only on a 1-year deal, Rivers, so they want to make sure they get him something. But that'll be interesting there. And then you got the Rams, who I'm wondering, this would be a perfect fit for me. DeAndre Swift falling to the Rams in the second round. And that's very possible. Would you agree?
Yeah. I mean, the way that running backs, I mean, they need to just kind of redo everything. And they got rid of everybody.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, if they don't want to pay a running back, so the best way to get around it is to draft one.
Yeah, but I also, you can get them later. And I know McVay from his time in Washington, he likes, the guys that he brought over from there. I think it's Brown. I can't even remember. Malcolm Brown. I don't know. That whole team.
He just Malcolm Brown is just a guy. Like
He is just a guy.
He's just yeah,
He's just a guy. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see. And I like some of those other ones too, like who was the first running back going to be taken. I didn't include it, but Jonathan Taylor or Swift. I mean, that's another thing. Like, what role do you want the running back to fulfill? In fact, I was going to say if Washington still had that second-round pick, that would be an interesting pick because of the offensive system that they're going to employ. They're going to probably want somebody who can catch the ball out of the backfield. We haven't really gotten any sample size whatsoever of Darius Geis in 2 seasons. He blew his knee out before the first season, played in like 4 games last year or something like that. I do think he's going to be an uptick from volume guy, but they haven't – Peyton Barber they added in free agency. They haven't really filled that hole yet for what this system I think is going to want to be. What a mess that franchise is. The old Redskins franchise, if you can what a mess that organization. But I think Rivera will get it going. Anyway, I think we can probably call the episode there. You got anything else for the listeners, Andrew?
I guess I just got one more thing for you. So where do you think, so we talked a lot about the quarterbacks. So, I mean, where does Jordan Love is going to be in the first round, but where does he kind of, I didn't include him in my first mock, right. But then when I just kind of went, as I'm working on my second one, I'm like, he's going to go in the first round somewhere, but like, I don't really know where, because I've seen him like fall to the Patriots. I've seen him, people trade up for him. Like, he's a total wild card when it comes to this draft. But I just know that quarterbacks just go in the first round because, especially when they have any type of trait that looks like Patrick Mahomes, like people are going to be like, oh, well, we're going to take him. So, and I don't know, is a team going to take him as a, like, did the Saints like, hey, Drew Brees is getting old, like, or is it a scenario where Jordan Love is still on the board and the team's like, oh man, like, let's just go get him. Like, we didn't think he was going to be here. Let's trade up for him anyway. Or like, is that the Colts? Do they package those 2 picks in the second round to move up?
If I'm the Colts, I do that. Just because, look, I mean, Rivers, he might play 2 years. I don't know how much because Rivers, he's always said he's never wants to leave like the Southern California area. So now he's in Indianapolis with his ex-offensive coordinator, Frank Reich. He knows the system. It was a really, really nice fit for him, as we talked about in our last episode. But you can't have any faith that he's going to play beyond this season. I would put it 50-50 at best that he goes into 2021. So if you're Indianapolis, you kind of have to. If you can, without completely mortgaging your future, I think he's a great fit for that system. But yeah, I'm, thinking about the teams, I could see Oakland surprising people if he's sitting there at 19. They're already talking to, some other quarterbacks and all that. Is he a prototypical Gruden quarterback though? No. Jacksonville, I don't see that happening. I'm thinking about these teams that are like in that 15 to deep. The Patriots, I don't think they'll do it. We've been hearing you remember all those stupid rumors? I never believed them for a second that they were going to trade up and try to draft Baker Mayfield. Never believed it for a second. I mean, come on, it's lunacy. That would never happen. So I don't see the Patriots doing that. I can't think. I mean, it's got to be somebody moving up because I don't think he's going to slip out of that first round like you're saying.
I just feel like it's going to be a surprise team.
New Orleans, I think, like you were saying, that's a very interesting one.
Yeah, but that's the other thing too. Like that's probably like if you want to make, if you're looking at the betting again, if you just want to like have a fun draft time and see if you can make a lot of money with a little money, I think Jordan Love at the second quarterback drafted at plus 1,200. Like, I mean, let's say Tua falls. Let's say everyone's freaking out about his medicals. Okay, he's off. And then let's just say I think there are teams that like Jordan Love more than Justin Herbert. Yeah. I think that there are teams that hate Justin Herbert. So it's a matter of Tua's medicals are just like such a red flag. Yeah. And then Jordan Love just, hey, he's here. We're going to take him after Burrow. So I think that if you want to take a wild shot, I think that Jordan Love plus 1,200 would be mine as the second quarterback drafted. I think that's what I would roll with.
That was you know what? I was thinking about that one hard beforehand because, like you said, I've heard that too. Love is better than Herbert. So if Tua falls, I mean, like let's say Miami, to my argument earlier, passes on Tua, and everybody in the world thinks that Miami, if they have the opportunity to draft Tua, they will. Let's say they pass on him, and then let's say the Chargers like somebody else better. So then 2 quarterback needy teams pass on Tua, Tua could fall because the NFL will be reactive. They'll think, well, what do they know that we don't know? And then,
Oh yeah, I know for sure.
So they that could vary. I don't think that's the most likely thing in the world, but that could certainly happen. If Oakland, I'm sorry, I keep saying Oakland. If the Chargers and the Dolphins pass on quarterbacks, is it likely? No. But if it happens, I could see Tua sliding.
Oh yeah, if those two teams pass on quarterbacks, that's going to cause a whole mess of things because those are the teams that. I would say confidently that like every mock has at least probably one of those teams taking quarterback. Like,
right.
It's hard to not see them both, or at least one of those teams not taking a quarterback.
Yeah.
But Sean, you gotta quit saying Oakland, man. There's no teams in Oakland.
I know, dude. That's gonna be so hard. But you know what? At least I don't get. At least like Vegas doesn't have enough fans yet for them to be like, oh, it's the Vegas. We'll see. We'll probably get some comments on that when I upload the video. I always get those. Like, yeah, But you make mistakes, you leave yourself open to that. It always astonishes me, never ceases to amaze me that somebody will watch a half-hour video of something that you go into depth on, and they'll like be like, oh, you said this, this word, or you said this team. Well, obviously I meant the other team. It's not like you made that mistake. It's like, man, that's a weird way to spend a half hour, dude. Congratulations, you foiled me. But it's the life of a YouTuber and a podcaster. But Oakland, yeah, it's gonna be hard. That's gonna be hard. You're gonna have to keep me honest on that. That's Oakland. Even in my Fantasy Football Almanac, even in that, I'm having trouble like writing it, like moving it back, and all of the formulas for the stats are still Oakland because I'm not gonna spend the time changing them. So it's going to be extra hard for me to kick because in all my stat sheets, I keep seeing Oak, 3-letter codes. So it's not gonna be easy. It's not gonna be easy. Hey everybody, thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe wherever you're picking this up. Follow me on Twitter. You can see it in the show notes below too, wherever you're picking this up. But I'm at TFS_Sean. Andrew is at Andrew Erickson _. Again, you can see it in the show notes below. Why don't you plug your other podcast real quick, Andrew, and then we can head out.
Yeah, you guys can find me over at gridironexperts.com. I do the _. podcast, just talking all about fantasy football. It's a fun time.
Fun time. Thankfully, fantasy football is still alive and well. It's a year-round sport, baby. It's a year-round sport. So, pick up our podcast too. And definitely, if you're just listening to us, go to youtube.com/theunderdog. We would appreciate your patronage. Thank you, everybody. Have a great week. Stay healthy. Be good.